On this episode of Locked On Angels, our Halos get the win against the Rangers last night, 6-4. Another win against the team ahead of them in the standings, in the wildcard standings, in the AOS standings. So does this change anything as we get closer and closer to the trade deadline? We'll discuss. I'm Mike, that's John. We're the Super Halo Bros, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Mike and I are here 5 days a week talking Angels baseball with you every single weekday, Monday through Friday. On today's show, what are the Angels saying about the trade deadline? And also, we're sharing a trade that didn't happen in Halo history and discussing if it should have happened. It'll be a fun one in segment 3. But first, Mike, we got to talk about the big win. The Angels win 6-4 against the Rangers last night. Let's give our everydayers our takeaways from this game.
Yeah, first takeaway is Jack Kochanowicz was back, John.
Jack.
And his numbers, they don't really tell the story. Now, 4 2/3, 1 hit, 2 unearned runs, 6 walks, and 3 Ks. Now, he should have had at least 5 innings pitched in this game, but in the top of the 5th, he got out of a bases-loaded jam. Adolis Garcia flies out to right field, but Gustavo Campero drops the ball. I mean, it was a situation. It was an easy catch, and everybody was like, "You're kidding me, right?"
Are you serious right now? Yeah.
2-run score. The Angels challenge just because you need to in that situation, but he did not have control of the ball. 2-run score. So that was a bummer because he would have gotten through 5 innings and would have been able to at least qualify for the win. John rage tweeted from Locked On Angels about Campero last night. And
What? I did what?
You rage tweeted, and it was funny. And we'll get to him in just a moment. Now, Ray Montgomery came out after that, took Jack out of the game, and it may have just been a mindset situation because that was a frustrating situation for Kochanowicz. The Angels actually got the 3rd out in this top of the 5th 3 different times. There was the fly ball that was dropped in right field. Then Connor Brogdon enters and got Jock Peterson to pop out on a foul ball, but Ohapi doesn't see it, and Newman is thinking that Ohapi's going to get it, and so he's kind of casually jogging in. The ball drops, and the crowd let him hear it because it would have been the 3rd out for the second time. Finally, Connor Brogdon strikes out Jock Peterson to get out of the inning, but the big focus, John, is Jack Kochanowicz. Let's talk about Jack Kochanowicz and this start from last night.
Yeah, he threw 75 pitches. 42 of them were out of the strike zone, but it was a combination of the sinker, the 4-seam fastball. We'll talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
The changeup and the slider. Remember, when he was in AAA, in that one start he threw the sinker, the change, and the slider. No 4-seam fastball. He threw the sinker last night, 53% of the time. He threw the 4-seam 31% of the time. Then he threw the changeup and the slider a combined 12 times. He got the most whiffs on his fastball, 5 total swings and misses. It's the walks that have been a problem, and they were last night. He walked 6. 2 of them were intentional. But Mike, I'm pulling up this graphic here. If you're on the video side, it's from StatCast. It shows the location of all of his pitches. And you can see, and I'll describe it for those on the audio side, you can see the assignment, right? It was to work down in the zone. Now, some of those are over the middle of the zone a little bit, but the fact is you can see most of the sliders are down in the zone, the sinkers down in the zone, the changeup, throwing it lower in the zone. And then look at all those 4-seam fastballs at the top of the zone. And that's why he was generating those swings and misses, getting 3 strikeouts, and I believe it was a total of 9 or 10 ground ball outs for Jack Kochanowicz. So again, it's stuff that falls out of the zone. Of course, the sinker is going to tumble out of the zone. That's what it's designed to do. And that's going to lead to some walks. To be fair, he was more in control last year. And so I look at this as a step in the right direction because it looked like 2024 Jack Kochanowicz. It was him, getting those ground ball outs that he was able to, and, getting a couple of strikeouts by throwing that fastball up. It's what I've been preaching, Mike. And so, but he's not listening to me. He's obviously listening to his coaches, but good to see him stick to the plan, have some consistency. Again, the walks are something that I think will come with time as he tries to get back to doing that. But Jack Kochanowicz he's gonna have some walks, right, Mike? Because the fact is that stuff starts in the zone, it drops out of the zone. That's how you get guys to chase. That's how you get them to swing over it. That's how you get guys to ground out on the ground balls. So I think this was a step in the right direction for Jack Kochanowicz, but I really love seeing him employ that fastball at the top of the zone.
Yeah, he'll get a lot of swings and misses if he can get that fastball to hit the top of the zone while he's throwing the sinker at the bottom of the zone. And he did some of that last night. The bummer is he would have, again, gone 5 innings and would have qualified for the win and wouldn't have given up any runs. They were unearned runs. And the Angels would have won 6-2 instead of 6-4 last night, right? And so it was a good start. It was a good move for the Angels to have him come back. I know that there was some debate online if this was a good move or not. I think that they really see a future with this guy, and they needed him to correct some things. We had an everydayer ask a question on YouTube yesterday, like, why bring him back up? Why not bring somebody else up? Well, Madero's pitched, and so that's one of the reasons. He pitched 2 days ago, so that's one of the reasons why he wasn't available. And I think that their plan, seems like, was to have Kochanowicz go back down and just block out the noise of the major leagues and focus on what he did well last year. And it sounded like that's what the conversation was at AAA. Hey, we want you to really focus on throwing the sinker. I got a fly that I'm swatting. Throwing the sinker down in the zone, and then also using some of your off-speed stuff. It's interesting that he did add the four seam back into the rotation and the combination of pitches, right?
I'm glad that he did that because, again, that's where he was able to get his strikeouts. And for those asking about somebody else that they could bring up, here's the issue. The guys on the 40-man roster that they can bring up for arms, 4 of them are starting pitchers, right?
Yeah.
It was Kochanowicz, it's Medeiros, it's Caden Dana, it's Sam Aldeguerri. They really only have Fermin and Jake Eater, who is kind of been the long man, right? And so they don't have a lot of relief depth. And I think that's an issue, Mike. And so that's something to consider as we move forward. Let's talk about the second takeaway from this game. The Angels responded to the Ranger runs with runs of their own. They did go up 2-0 on a Kevin Newman. Does that say Kevin Newman?
Yeah,
let me check.
It really happened.
Kevin Newman, a home run in the bottom of the third off Jacob deGrom, by the way, who we got Jacob deGrom's number. This is
right.
8 earned runs over his 2 starts against us this year. The Rangers tied it up on that error by Campero in the 5th. Bottom of the inning, Zach Neto doubled. And now you said I rage tweeted, but I did say that I feel like Campero needed to drop that ball because all of a sudden he turned on another gear.
Yeah, he did.
He got doubled in and scored by Zach Neto. I don't think he would have stopped even if Bo Porter gave him the stop sign, but he was trying to score and make up for that mistake. And then later on, he stole 2 bases, stole second and third, didn't come home on that one, but he had 2 hits on the night and that run scored. So just a really funny situation there. Then in the back in the top of the 6th, the Rangers get their runs back. Bottom of the 6th, Taylor Ward gives the Halos the lead back on his 25th home run of the season. That ties his career high that he set last year. Ohapi gets a double to right. And then it looked like, I thought that was out. It was just carrying and carrying. But then Adolis Garcia has an error of his own in right field. So maybe the lights were weird. Maybe something's going on there because that ball fell behind Garcia. It didn't make any sense. And so Ohapi, it should have been caught, but Garcia lost it in the air and it bounced onto the warning track. Rengifo hits a 2-run home run to right to give the Halos a 3-run lead. Jeff Fletcher tweeted this out. Over his last 40 games, Luis Rengifo is slashing .295 with a .344 on base and a .432 slugging percentage right in time for trade season, Michael. So there you go.
Third takeaway from this game last night is the Angels bullpen needed to rise to the occasion, and they did. Now, we mentioned Connor Brogdon. He took over for Jack Kochanowicz, and he went an inning and a third. He gave up a run on 2 hits. That run came on a home run. Then Jose Quijada entered this game, only went a third of an inning, and I think they used him appropriately. He didn't have control. He wasn't getting guys out. His fastball wasn't as sharp, and his off-speed stuff definitely wasn't as sharp, and so they yanked him after his third required hitter that he faced, and then brought in Zephyr John, and he carried a really heavy load. He went an inning and a third. He struck out 3. He did inherit 2 on and 1 out, and he got Garcia and Peterson to end the threat. Then got into more trouble in the top of the 8th inning. He did allow 1 run on a broken bat single from Jonah Heim, but that wasn't too bad, wasn't too dangerous, but I loved that they went immediately with 2 outs in the 8th inning. They went to Kenley Jansen, and he threw 1 pitch in the 8th inning and got it out, and then he came back in for the 9th inning, ended up throwing 12 pitches total and got his 19th save of the year, and the Angels won the game last night 6-4.
Can I make a joke real fast about Kenley Jansen? And, we've spouted a couple of times like, hey, what if he wants to go back to the Dodgers? What if the Angels trade him? They need the bullpen help. I think it was a tweet from Dodgers Nation that was like, hey, should we bring back Jansen? And all of the comments, Mike, were like, don't bring him back. We don't need him. I'm like, okay, well, you pitched Tanner Scott till his elbow fell off. So it's not like you don't need bullpen help. And Kenley Jansen's been elite this year. So it just goes to show the casuals in the fan base, because it's like, come on. I would love to have Kenley Jansen on my team, especially if my bullpen was suffering the way that they have been this season.
And this version of Kenley Jansen is a rock star. I mean, I know he's been great in his career, but this version is perfect for our team. I wonder what would happen if he goes to a more veteran-filled team like the Dodgers, if he can still control the story, the narrative like he does on the mound. I'm assuming he would take that same approach, but he's got bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young players around him. They're like, whatever you want to do, bro. And I think that that's part of his success with the Angels. I wonder what would happen if he got traded to like the Dodgers or another team, if he would still be that same guy with those players.
Yeah, and he's healthy. So there you go, Dodger fans. All right, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, what are the Angels saying about this trade deadline? Not Mike, not John, not Locked On Angels, not our everydayers. What are the Angels saying about this trade deadline? That's very important, and we'll share coming right up.
If you haven't yet, you got to check out Game Day Hue. They make clean, no logo gear, team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. And John and I both got a hat and a golf glove from Game Day Hue. John's hat is white with red stripes around it to represent the halos, and a golf glove with white with a red palm. I got a light blue hat and a light blue glove just because I wanted to be different. But
did you go Disney? Is that what you did? You did it Disney Angels?
I loved the blue color. When they offered it to us, I was like, I'm going to take that because I knew you'd probably go red, and I didn't want to be like your brother.
This looks like their home white jersey too. That's what I love about it.
I really like that there's no giant logos. They're just smart. They're versatile. You can use it if you're going to go golfing or if you're going to go to a game, but you also can wear it in everyday life. If you're going to go out to dinner or if you're going to go out to, work, whatever it might be, it's not obtrusive. It's nice. You don't look like you're getting ready for a game. You look like you're getting ready for the day or the game. I love Game Day Hue, and you're going to love it too. In fact, you're going to love it so much, they're going to give you 15% off if you go to their website right now at gamedayhue.com and use the promo code MLB15. Again, Game Day Hue, HUE.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the opportunity. Let your colors speak, because colors speak louder than words. GameDayHue.com, promo code MLB15.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Before the weekend, ESPN reported that the Angels are telling teams that their pending free agents are available. We've got the full report here. Here's what they had to say. The Angels' deadline plans coming into clarity. Any confusion about whether the Angels will add or subtract ahead of the trade deadline has seemingly cleared up in recent days with a 4-game losing streak that has them 5 games under 500. The Angels are telling teams that their pending free agents are available, with sources with knowledge of the situation said. That includes Yohan Moncada, Luis Rengifo, Tyler Anderson, Kenley Jansen. Taylor Ward can also be had for the right price. The Angels famously never rebuilt under owner Artie Moreno and are prone to adding, even in times where it seems like a long shot, to contend, most notably in 2023, when they not only held on to Shohei Ohtani, but traded for Lucas Giolito and Reynaldo Lopez before collapsing in August. At this time last year, they tried to move the likes of Anderson and Rengifo, but they did not believe that they would have received enough back to justify holding on to them through the next season. So it's worth noting, even if the Angels decide to punt on 2025, their goal would be to contend next season. And then, right by Robert Murray on Twitter, he said the Angels are indeed listening on their rental options. I don't expect them to move anyone signed long-term, though. I don't know what that means for Ward and Adele. I think it's more likely that hell freezes over before Artie trades Jansen or anyone to the Dodgers.
Yeah, and then a friend from Angels Win, Chuck Richter, he tweeted this, and he said, in response to what John just read, that's a bogus media narrative that was created since the Jock Peterson and Ross Stripling for Louis Rengifo deal that already nixed back in 2020. Chuck said, I talked to a couple of people within the Angel brass, and they laughed it off. They said the Halos will trade with any team if the return is good. Now, Chuck's been around for a long time, has some great connections with the Halos, so I take that for what it is, right? And I also think that Robert Murray isn't fooling anybody either. I think he's got some good information as well, along with ESPN. So with all of that in the conversation, John, what do you anticipate are Halos doing? Are they going to trade away guys and get some guys back, or do you anticipate them keeping these guys and trying to maybe add to this team, especially if they win 2 out of 3 or maybe even sweep the Rangers? I know I'm talking way ahead of the game, but if that happens, who knows what the thought process might be? What do you think the thought process might be, and what do you think the direction will be?
I think the Angels are going to listen on everyone, and they're going to see what the deals are going to be and if it's worth trading for. So, for example, I think that if they are to put Tyler Anderson out there, they have to get something more than, a single A starting pitcher who's 20 years old, 19 years old, right? And to me, when I look around the league, that's kind of what the going rate is, Mike, for somebody like Tyler Anderson. However, if the Angels aren't, excited about whatever response or offer they're getting from other teams, Mike, I think they just keep it together and they keep trying. I think that's the problem with this Angels club right now, is that they're close enough to try and out of it enough to sell. And so I think at this point, it's going to be a combination of both. I don't think that they're going to buy. I don't think they'll go out there and add anybody to this major league club. But here's the problem with that. We have a large sample size of this season, and they are a 500 ball club. They're a little bit under 500 right now, but in general, you could call this team 500, right? Mm-hmm. They've been there several times. They can't get over the hump. They fall back below. They'll fight their way back. Heck, they might fight their way back by the end of the week, right? And it'll be too little too late because the deadline is on Thursday. And so I say all that because I think that for Rengifo, for Anderson, they're going to have to get blown away by those kinds of deals in order to move them, or they'll just say, fine, we'll just keep trying and we'll keep chugging forward. And so it's not so much that they're standing pat and believing that they can, turn things around and go somewhere. I think it's more that, is it worth it to try, or is it worth it to trade these pieces? And in order for it to be worth it, they're going to have to get good deals for somebody like Tyler Anderson. Now, in the case of Kenley Jansen, I've thrown this out there, and I talked to our old buddy Jeff Snyder, who does Dodgers podcast, and he thought that my idea for somebody like Jansen for Emmett Sheehan would be not quite enough to deal an arm like that. But Mike, I don't know, maybe a Dustin May, right? It's got to be somebody that can help the Angels in the next couple of years. And it doesn't have to be with the Dodgers. It could be with anybody. But I think if they're going to move pieces, the kinds of pieces that they're going to have to get are guys that are a year away from the majors, right? Colby Mayo, from the Orioles, who will probably have a spot to play once the Orioles are done selling, but he's somebody that we looked at last year, and he's one of their top prospects. But a lot of those guys, like Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers for the Orioles, they were positionally blocked. So they sent them to the Marlins so that they could get Trevor Rogers, right? And so I look around this league and I think about some of the people that are blocked, right? Jace Young, who I think is the other Young from Texas, I think he's a relative, or I think maybe they're brothers. I don't know. But he's a third baseman who doesn't get a lot of playing time with the Tigers. And so I don't know if the Tigers are interested in another back of the bullpen arm. Maybe the Angels get themselves a third baseman that they can play every day in somebody like Jace Young. Again, he's not been very great at the major league level, but he'd probably be great for the Angels and somebody that they could really use right away in 2025 and going into the next couple of years. So that's my take on it. I think that if you're going to make a deal, it has to be for somebody who's close to major league ready, like a Matthew Lugo, right? Somebody who could play tomorrow. I know the Angels are not having him play tomorrow, but he could play tomorrow, right? And I think that's who the Angels need to target. I think that's who they need to go for, because what they have right now is a team that could be ready to contend in the next couple of years. But if they don't get what they want for guys like Tyler Anderson or even Kyle Hendricks, right, then I don't think they're actually going to move them. And I think they're just going to keep trying to go for it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that they're going to have to prioritize players that are ready or almost ready. And I think what they're thinking about, which is why I don't think Taylor Ward goes anywhere, is they're thinking about next year. And they're thinking about, how do you replace Taylor Ward next year?
Yeah.
Now, you could probably potentially replace him with a Matthew Lugo, or if Jorge Soler actually has a better year because he's still under contract, right? There's a lot of directions that you can go, and you can trade Taylor Ward at the height of his value and get some really good pieces back. I think that the Angels are thinking about, like, well, he's probably going to be a $10 to $15 million guy next year based on arbitration numbers, based off of this season. You're not going to get a free agent that fits those numbers at all. You're going to be probably 20, 25 million to get the same numbers that Taylor Ward is putting up. And so I think that they're thinking not just right now, I think they're thinking next year as well, because their perspective is always, we're going to contend, we're going to contend, we're going to contend, right? And so that's why I don't think we'll see some of those guys with extra incentive, extra butter on the bread, so to speak. I don't think we're going to see them get traded away. Now, these guys like a Rengifo and a Jansen and some of those guys, there's potential for them to get traded away, but I don't know if those guys are going to go anywhere unless the Angels get knocked out of the park, which brings us back to the tension, the frustration that we felt. I want to ask you a question, John. Are you a trade them so that we can get something sort of guy, or are you a trade them and get something good for them?
Yeah, I think, look, in the past, especially in a season where they were way out of it last year, it was get anything that you possibly can. Go get that single A starting pitcher, right? Yeah. Who cares, right? You got to get something instead of getting nothing. And last year, that was certainly the case. And it turned out to be really good because Carlos Estevez brought back the two arms. We got 4 players for Luis Garcia. Yeah. And look, I think that Kenley Jansen is having a much better season than Carlos Estevez was last year. And so he's very, very valuable. Emmanuel Clase is not going to pitch probably the rest of the year. Could be done in his career if he gets caught, with betting shenanigans or what have you. And so he's out of the market. So Kenley Jansen just moved up a tick, right? And so the closers are going to be really valuable. I know the Twins, they got Johan Duran, who is probably among them. Ryan Helsley from the Cardinals is also another name. But for the Angels to put Jansen out there, you're going to get something probably better than what you got for Carlos Estevez last year. Having said that, I think this year, I don't know, Mike. I think that if the guys think that they can turn this season around, you got to give them something. And I think that means not breaking up the entire team. And so, yeah, I think that they are in a situation, because I said they're not quite far behind enough, but they're also not ahead enough to buy. And so I don't think that they'll actually buy, but they are going to have to be blown away and get whatever value they hold true for guys like Anderson and Rengifo and Moncada. They're going to have to be blown away by those offers. And I don't think they will be, but they're going to have to make some concessions if they want to get anything of value out of those guys, right?
Yeah, I think that and that's going to be the big tension point. And for this Halo team, I just don't know if they're going to say yes to that. I think that they're going to, what I mean by that is, I don't know if they're going to say yes to, hey, we'll just get some pieces and we'll build for the future. That just doesn't seem to be their process. And tomorrow we're going to talk about Perry Manassian specifically, and is his job on the line when it comes to making these trades. So I think a lot rides on this potential trade deadline. And you brought up a good point. If you trade people away, does that just take all the momentum out of the locker room? Now, everydayers are probably saying, what momentum, right? I get that, right? But I think Perry's trying to wrestle through that, because it sounds like this team, based on the quotes that we've shared on this show, it sounds like this team believes that they can go far if they can just put it together. But you've had 100+ games to try to put it together, and you haven't. Do they really, what this trade deadline is about is, do we count on the guys that we put together at the beginning of the year to really do what like the Tigers did last year and hit all the metrics and hit all the numbers? That's the big question. And I just don't know if that's a great risk to take with this Halos team.
Look, I know we're over 100 games, but it's like the old adage. It's you win 50, you lose 50. It's what you do with the 62 that are left.
Yep.
And even though there's less than 62 right now, it's kind of where the Angels are at, Mike, is what are you going to do with the remaining games that you have in 2025?
I love talking trades. I love talking trade season. This is one of my favorite times of the year. And it's because there's all these potential, like what will happen and who will we get and all of those things. And there was a conversation that took place on Ryan Ripken's podcast. He's the son of Baseball Hall of Famer Cal Ripken. And he recently had Jim Duquette on his podcast. He's a former Orioles front office executive. And they discussed a trade that almost happened in 2006. John, get this. The trade was going to be between the Angels and the Orioles. And it was before the 2006 season took place. It involved Bartolo Colon or Irvin Santana, plus Eric Ibar and a prospect for Miguel Tejada. Now, let's just look at the numbers for a moment. Colon in 2005 was coming off a 21-win season where he won the Cy Young. Irvin Santana was coming off an 11-8 season with a 4.65 ERA, was just 22 years old and getting started. Ibar was an unknown commodity at the time because he didn't make his MLB debut until 2006, because Orlando Cabrera was at shortstop for the Halos. And then they would have added another prospect. So it would have been Santana or Colon, Ibar, and another prospect. And then the Angels would have received Miguel Tejada, who in 2005 was slashing 311, 360, 534, and an 894 OPS at 26 home runs, 98 RBIs, 50 doubles in 162 games. In fact, he had played 162 games in 5 consecutive seasons up until that point. In 2006, he would play another 162 games. Now, the Orioles owner, they balked at this trade. John, what would this trade have done for the Halos? I mean, this is great news, 20 plus years later. But if the Angels went through, what would this have done for our Halos?
Yeah, it's interesting because you get Vladdy Sr. and Tejada in this lineup. Now, you brought up Bartolo and the potential to be traded. He was bad in 2006, Mike. 1-5, a 5.11 ERA. The only thing that would have stunk is not having Eric Ibar.
Yeah.
But man, that's a really hard decision to make. Here's the thing. He was signed with Baltimore through 2009. And so I kind of wonder if, those 07 playoffs, the 08 playoffs, the 09 playoffs would have looked a whole lot different. I mean, good grief. You had so many great hitters in that 2008 and 09 lineup, right?
Well, and think about 08. 08 was the year that they traded for Mark Teixeira.
Right.
And got him to play first base. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about, like, you have Teixeira and Vladdy and Tejada in the same lineup. I mean, that would have been phenomenal. Would have been remarkable, right? And I know Ibar played an interesting role there, but I would trade Ibar straight up for Tejada in the lineup every single day, just because Tejada's bat was so much more impactful than Ibar. Now, I know I'll probably get kicked off the show for saying that, but I loved Ibar, but that would have been a significant 2008 season with those huge bats in the lineup.
Man, I can't even imagine what that would have looked like. And I'm looking at the Baltimore Orioles, just trying to save time. They ended up trading him to the Astros. Mm-hmm. They got 5 players back for him. And then he was a free agent in 2009, came back to the Orioles in 2010, got traded halfway through the season at the deadline to the Padres. Of course, a couple years with the Giants, more years with the Orioles, and then finished up with the Marlins in just a month or two stint there. So, man, yeah, what could have been is always fun to think about. So I'm interested to hear from our everydayers who are longtime fans of this team. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have taken that trade? Would you have gone for it? I know Baltimore said no. However, we kind of know how, all those players turned out. I mean, if they hadn't gone with Bartolo and maybe wanted Santana, that certainly changes the dynamic of those Angels teams as well. So yeah, let's hear from you in the comments. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's show, get in the comment section, because we'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this Miguel Tejada trade that never happened.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Angels on YouTube so you don't miss out on all this Halo content, this great Halo content, including the best postcast in the business with Gavin Carlson. He's live after every game right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels. Connect with Mike and I at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, what do we have on deck for Tuesday's show?
Is Perry's job on the line with this trade deadline? Is his job on the line? Does this determine his future? Or is Artie just going to go, I really like that guy, we're just going to keep him around? I know he's got another year, but does this determine what happens in the offseason and what happens next year for Perry Minasian? We're going to discuss all of that tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Well, look, don't take that extra year into account, because for some reason in 2020, they extended Billy Epler.
Yeah.
And then they fired him at the end of the season anyway.
Right.
So yeah,
right.
Good job paying the guy for an extra year and then not having him on in the front office.
Epler didn't complain, right?
right. Yeah, certainly. All right, friends. Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday.
We wouldn't have had Ibar and Howie at second and short, and that was fun to watch. Yeah.